Vivek, on guns, your position is absolute Second Amendment. People could carry concealed weapons.
Yes.
You were in New York for a period of time. We had 481 mass shootings. You would allow assault weapons, unlimited magazines, 20 bullets, 50 bullets, 70 bullets, no background checks, concealed carry in New York cities. It would be the Wild West. I mean, just think about it. Everyone has a gun is the answer.
The reality is there are states where that is the case today, where gun violence is far lower than it is in New York City. I'm not blaming anybody for this or any particular politician or policymaker, but that's a hard fact. And the vision of the founding vision of this country is that this is how you keep tyranny and overreaching foreign monarchy
you stop
at bay.
The government. I get that.
And so my view is this. Listen, I think that the real problem in this country when it comes to violent crime, because you and I share, I think, a genuine concern about the violent crime spike in this country. I think if we're serious about how to address that, there's two things we need to do. I understand they're controversial, and I think we should have an open and honest discussion about it. One is more cops on the streets who are actually allowed to do their job without fear of being sued or looking over their shoulder. And number two, bring back mental health institutions in this country, because we have a mental health crisis, not just by drugging people up with pharmaceuticals. That's not the solution, but even faith-based and other approaches that restore that sense of purpose and meaning that so many are missing. Yes, there were abuses. There were abuses in the past, and we shouldn't repeat those mistakes at mental health and psychiatric institutions. But that shouldn't be the reason for shuttering them. And over the last, 25 years, over the period where we've seen the shuttering of those mental health institutions is exactly the inverse correlation we've seen with respect to the rise in violent crime.
Mental health, we'll say for another time. But everyone has a gun. Everyone has an assault weapon. A former felon. No background check.
Has the right to. And I do think concealed carry is important. Constitutional carry is important. You know, background checks, non-politicized, are absolutely a legitimate part of the process.
But for what?
As they exist today.
If you can be a former felon and have a gun, then the background checks are meaningless.
Well, look, I think you and I, may respectfully agree to disagree on this one. I think that I am a Second Amendment absolutist, and I think the data, we may agree to disagree, but I think the data is on my side here that many of the areas where you have the tightest gun laws are also the areas with the highest violent crime rates.
Stopping it there. He's not wrong about that. Like, I believe Chicago has pretty tight gun laws, some of the tightest in America, and they have the highest rate of gun violence. So I think he's right where the data shows even if you tighten up the gun laws, it doesn't get rid of gun violence. And some states that have the loosest gun laws have less gun violence. By the way, welcome to Mika Reaction Reviews. We're reacting to things on the internet. We're reacting to Vivek, and he's doing an interview with Andrew Cuomo on gun rights and gun laws. So there was a couple of things I agree with Vivek and some things I'm not really sure about. I don't believe in getting rid of background checks. And he said, well, if it's not a politicized background check, I don't know what type of background check is politicized. I've never known a background check to ask for your political affiliation or your religious affiliation or your gender or your sexuality. So, or maybe they asked about your race. I don't know, but like, let me know if you've done a gun background check, if you thought that the background check was politicized. I never thought it was politicized, but I could be wrong about that. I do think background checks should stay. That's my personal opinion. I don't believe assault weapons, like automatic assault weapons, like the ones they use in the army, I don't think those should be implemented. And I don't think you should be able to walk around with like an unlimited array of guns on you. Like maybe in your personal, like maybe in your home, locked up somewhere, but like not on you. I don't know. Like, it is a little bit hard being overseas to constantly like have to defend gun rights towards people who live in countries that don't have gun rights like we do. They don't understand it because all they hear on the news is like, mass shooting, school shooting. And they're like, well, how can you still want gun rights, all these guns, if all these people are dying? And I always defend the rights to bear arms for my country. It's just sometimes hard to articulate why I'm defending it to people who don't get it, because it is like, yeah, no, I get mass shooting, I know, but it's mental health, and that's the thing that I agree with Vivek on, is that we really need to focus way more on mental health. We do live in a society and a culture now where everybody's self-diagnosing themselves and everyone has a mental health illness, and they do it in a way where they're trying to romanticize it or make it a part of their identity or their scapegoat. And I do believe there is a lot of mental health issues going on in America, but it's not being talked about and it's not being taken care of the way it should be. Either again, people are just self-diagnosing themselves all over the place and they're using it as an identity or a scapegoat, or they're being overly medicated and none of it's really being taken care of. Like you see with the transgender youth and all these detransitioners coming out and saying, like, I had all these other mental health problems that nobody was concerned about and nobody talked to me about, and they only cared about the fact that I thought I was a different gender or I thought I was a different sex. So they're being misdiagnosed because they're allowed to diagnose themselves. Or people who are in the fat positivity realm, who a lot of times you overeat because there's something going on up here. You have some childhood trauma, you have some PTSD, you have some anxiety problems, you're depressed, and none of those things are being talked about and not being helped, or there's no concern, because it's just like, well, you're fat and beautiful, so we don't have to talk about the underlying issues. It's the same thing with men's rights or the incel community, where it's like they're blaming the women for all their problems, but no one's talking about the depression rate, the suicide rate, the mental health rate. Like, no one's actually tackling the mental health problem the way it needs to be tackled. Either it's just brushed under the rug and something else is blamed, or is overly medicated and this person's never really receiving help and they're never really getting to the root issues of their problem. I really agree with him on that point, that we need to open more mental health facilities or counseling. And he even said the whole thing like faith-based. I believe that is also a thing that really can help people going back to faith or just spirituality. Anyway, let's get back into the video.
In the cities of this country. And so that suggests to me that we're looking in the wrong place to address the violent crime problem. And we need to go to time-tested policies that do work, both in terms of effective policing and in terms of actual psychiatric and mental health institutions, and actually in communities where law-abiding citizens are able to use guns, or at least to own guns. That's something that actually deters many violent criminals from being able to roam the streets with guns as they do today. So yeah, I think we respectfully, disagree on that, but I do think that there's trade-offs to every policy, but this is the right trade-off that will most importantly secure liberty in this country, not only keep the government at bay, but even keep violent crime at bay. And I do think that the data does support that the cities with the tightest gun laws are the ones that tend to have the highest crime rates.
Yeah, I hear you on that. But saying law-abiding, law-abiding, which means a background check that eliminates felons, eliminates people with mental health issues, and then to say assault weapons that make it almost impossible for a police officer. The police officers step in when they get a chance, which is normally when the person reloads. You have a magazine that has 20 bullets, 30 bullets. Who wants to be the police officer who runs into that school?
So, look, I think that you and I are going to respectfully disagree on this one, even though I know we share the same objective of both making sure that we address the violent crime spike in this country. With due respect, and as you know, if we wanted to get, I'm excited for this to be the first of hopefully more conversations we have. If we had time for one more question topic after this, that'd be great. But to just close the loop on this one, the short answer is that case that you described is not a real case that presents itself very often compared to real life violence between a lot of violent criminals in cities who are breaking a lot of other laws, including themselves not going through the proper process of the violent crimes they commit to the way they even whether or not they acquired their firearms. So I think that if we're actually going to restrict firearms, we're going to see more lawbreakers still continue to own guns while law-abiding citizens don't. And the right answer, I think, is not removing guns from law-abiding citizens, but removing those who are psychiatrically ill and dangerous and violent, remove those people from their community, which is controversial. But I do think that if we're serious about taking on the crime epidemic, the violent crime epidemic in this country, that's where we're going to have to land.
Yeah, reinstitutionalization would be more than controversial.
All right, that's it, guys. I agree with Cuomo. I think that it would be really controversial because I think it's really a slippery slope for corruption to say that the government now has a right to remove people from the public in some ways, sort of jail them in an institution, in a medical building or a mental health building because they have deemed this person mentally unfit. Like, I guess the thing would be like, who is the one who gets to say someone is mentally unfit? Because that can go either way. You know, it could really be, everything's politicized right now. It can become very political. It can go either way. So I think that it is really a controversial thing. I think I agree that mental health need to be taken more seriously, and I already spoke about that. I do believe that mental health institutions can be re-implemented. I agree with that. However, I do think that it's a slippery slope to say that the government has a right to remove people from the streets if they seem them mentally unfit. I think that can turn corrupted anyway, and it can swing anyway if politics get involved. So I think it's really a slippery slope. I do understand Cuomo's point of saying, like, if a police can't even intervene because a guy has unlimited gun magazines, then what are we supposed to do? But I also agree with Vivek saying that violent criminals are going to be hesitant to go into communities or homes if they know that this community is well armed. So it's going to be gun against gun. You know what I mean? And if they go to a community that they know is not armed, that they know they don't have guns because the government has stripped all their guns away, they're going to be more likely to attack those communities. And again, law-abiding citizens is who you're punishing, because criminals are criminals for a reason. Criminals don't uphold the law. They're criminals. So you're taking the guns away from the people who are law-abiding, but you're most likely going to give the power to the criminals because they're just going to get guns from the black market. If the government hasn't been able to stop sex trafficking from coming over the border, if the government hasn't been able to stop drugs from coming over the border, if they haven't been able to stop the cartel from doing what they're doing now, how are they going to stop guns from being sold in the black market to criminals? You know what I mean? Anywho, let me know what you guys think of Vivek's statement and Cuomo's. Who do you agree with when it comes to gun rights, gun laws, and stuff like that? Let me know in the comment section below. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that bell because notifications when I do upload. All of that really does help with the algorithm, guys. And you can donate, helps keep me on this channel. And you guys have an amazing, beautiful day. Bye.
Vivek, on guns, your position is absolute Second Amendment. People could carry concealed weapons.
Yes.
You were in New York.